screen starts glowing and the film starts rolling. You wanna be knowing what you might be in for. So give the show a listen and find out what you're missing. Put yourself in position for the easy good score.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Goods, a film podcast. This is episode 214, and my name is Brian. Dan, are you there?
I am, Brian. Hey.
Good to commune with you again on this interactive audio experience. I interact with you, you interact with me. The listeners are passive, but they don't have to be. We do have a Discord. Where can folks join that?
thegoodsfilmpodcast.com. Come find us there. They should come up with a name for this audio experience, like podcast or something.
Maybe someday. But yes, on this show, this podcast, each episode we watch a movie or two. This time we watched two, because this is the return of a kind of dormant feature, something we haven't returned to in a while, but I'm glad that we are finally getting the chance, which is called Violent Ends. Now, I came up with this early on in the podcast history. I think episode 4 was the first one, but the premise is that we take a look at two movies with very similar premises, very similar setups that end at widely divergent endings. Usually one of which is dark and violent and sometimes bloody. So the very first one of these that we watched was Parasite and It Happened on Fifth Avenue, which were both movies about a poor family secretly living in a rich family's house.
Parasite has been in the news, or at least the film Twitter, film discourse news, because New York Times recently did a ranking of the 100 best movies of the 21st century to date. And they put a lot of advertisement marketing behind it. They did like 20 a day. They made a feature where you could vote on them and share your 10 picks. So you would select 10, and those with the ones that got the most votes would be ranked the highest. But anyways, Parasite was number 1 for both the reader selected list and for the New York Times list, which they pulled various like filmmakers and critics and stuff.
Wow. That's a really strong performance by that film. Good movie. And at least for a long time, it was like the number 1 most logged on Letterboxd. So it's definitely got folks in its corner.
Right.
What were some other pairings that we considered for this schema?
Another early one was School of Rock and Dead Poets Society. That was another Brian special. 3 of the 4 we've done have been Brian specials.
Yeah, it's definitely my brainchild. In that case, it was an elite private school. A unconventional teacher shows up and teaches the prim and proper students to think outside the box, and the parents then have problems with that. Only in one case it ends with a rock concert, and in the other case it ends with a suicide.
And firing. Well, I guess they get fired in both of them.
Then we did a Halloween one where it was Monsters, Inc. with Cabin in the Woods, both movies that depict monsters as a business. You scare because you care. And then Dan came up with one. So what did you have us watch, Dan?
Mine was Disney's Bears and Grizzly Man, the Werner Herzog documentary. And the premise there was it followed Alaskan bears, and one of them was like a cuddly family documentary that ended with all of the bears, all of the subjects alive, joyfully eating salmon, having made it to the salmon thing. And the other one was a guy got eaten alive on audio tape. We don't hear the audio, but Spoilers for the end, I guess, of Grizzly Man.
Yeah, not so joyful perhaps for the salmon. It would be framed differently in the salmon documentary.
That's a great point. I've seen memes about that before.
But that one ended up working out really well because it's not just both about bears. It turned out it was like the same group of bears in the same place.
Right. Yeah. And Werner Herzog kind of breaks down the concept of a animal documentary and like what do we aim to achieve and what does it say about us as people that we project life onto these creatures. And then would you go and look, it's exactly what Disney Bears does. Like it gives names to each of the creatures and sort of anthropomorphizes them some.
So I really like this concept, pairing these movies together. I think it works, scratches your brain a little bit. And it's compelling because like these story structures appeal to us, and each time you tell a story, it's like iterative. You can try different things, you can wind up at different places, and you can use different tones and styles. And ever since Bears and Grizzly Man, I've been trying to come up with another one. Like I had a couple in the can when we first started the show, couple things on the docket, and then I burned through them, and I haven't thought of more for a while. Or in maybe in one or two cases, there was a situation where like we covered a movie and then I watched another movie that was like that. And it's like, oh, this would have been good. But never quite come up with another one until now. Splitting Adam and Mickey 17 was an attempt that I thought didn't quite fit the framework. They both arrived at reasonably happy endings, although one was a little bit more rated R.
Right. But those did end up being a pretty good pairing. At least they had similar themes or similar like premises, but very different tones.
Right.
If not the divergent endings.
But now I've got one. 2 weeks ago, I watched a movie called The Man Who Would Be King from 1975. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, this is it. I got it on lock. Finally, here is the return of Violent Ends at last. The two movies that we are considering today are The Man Who Would Be King, as I just said, and Road to El Dorado, a DreamWorks animated film from 2000. So, Dan, had you encountered either of these before?
I definitely had not seen The Man Who Would Be King. The Road to El Dorado, parts of it were familiar to me. I was like, I think I've seen this, but I certainly hadn't seen it all the way through in my adult life, I don't think.
But it also had me thinking of, we recently covered Prince of Egypt.
Very similar.
And this is like very similar style. And this presentation of an animated film where it's like all the characters are adults and it's like a sophisticated, in a way, story.
I kind of wish this had been the one to make like $800 million and not Shrek, because then DreamWorks would have kept making things like this instead of CGI, pop culture, snarky comedies.
Right. There was a divergence, a schism.
Because I feel like there's a space for this in the movie world. Like movies like this and Prince of Egypt, in some ways it's like the Disney Renaissance, but it's also like more grounded in like not necessarily history, but like swashbuckling adventure or something. I don't know, something like that.
Right. Yeah. We'll talk about it more. But something else I was thinking of was this definitely feels like, along with Ants, that there was some, and maybe what was the fish one? Shark Tale, not Fishtail. That there was some corporate espionage at work.
Oh.
Atom spies going back and forth between the Manhattan Project. Because what did Disney have in, I think it was 2001, Emperor's New Groove.
It might have been the same year, honestly.
I might have them out of order. One of the years was Atlantis, the Lost Empire, and the other year was Emperor's New Groove. So you got one that's like a South American story where they go and they study, I think in that case it was Inca. study all the Incan art and Inca fashion and really incorporate that into the design of your film. And then in the other case, Atlantis, it's like you've got this team of adventurers and they go and they're looking for this legendary lost location. And so I think there was some synergy at this time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Emperor's New Groove, I mean, there's kind of, I think there might even be a documentary about the making of it, or there's like been a lot written about it. It had a really troubled production, and I think at one point it was pitched more as like a South American adventure. It's going to be like Emperor of the King or something like
Yeah,
that.
Kingdom of the Sun.
Yeah. What did I say? Emperor of the King? That wouldn't make any sense.
Not the best title.
No.
Maybe worth a script revisit.
Yeah.
But I had seen Road to El Dorado before, and then this other one, The Man Who Would Be King, was new to me. Though I'd heard of it, I didn't really know anything about it. I think I had it mixed up with, there's another one called The Once and Future King that I think is about King Arthur. So I thought this one was also going to be about King Arthur when I put it on, and it's not.
No. I got it mixed up with A Man for All Seasons.
It's also not Different Man or Better Man or any of those other men. Or a Spider-Man.
A Man for All Seasons is another British cast historical drama. And that one is about, I think it takes place further in the past. I think it's like about a saint. It might be one of those ones that's like a metaphor for what was going on at the times. I can't remember. I get a lot of these dramas from the 60s and 70s mixed up in my head.
Or The Man Who Went Up the Hill and Came Down a Mountain. But I did put it on, and it turns out that this is a film starring Sean Connery and Michael Caine, so two pretty powerhouse British actors. I guess Sean Connery is Scottish, right?
Right. But definitely
The UK.
charisma top heavy.
Yeah. Well-known faces and names and voices. And we get Michael Caine as a narrator, which is always great. Love to hear Michael Caine narrate a movie.
Yeah. Not to jump ahead to the story itself, but the movie opens with a man walking in. He's like all dirty and beat, and his face is in shadows. And he opens his mouth to start speaking, and out comes Michael Caine's voice. And it's like it's not even like changed at all. It's just Michael Caine talking. I was like, I hope it's not supposed to be a surprise who this is, because I immediately know that this is Michael Caine. It's not supposed to be a surprise, thankfully, but it was just kind of funny to hear his voice right then when I wasn't quite expecting it yet.
Yeah. And this is adapted from a story, like a novella, by Rudyard Kipling. So, writer of like The Jungle Book, Just So stories, tends to write stories set in India, which is where this one starts out. And I guess the framing of the story, like in the movie, is that this was something that a guy wandered in and told to Rudyard Kipling. So he's the chronicler. He's the one who's writing it down, but he's not ostensibly making it up. Have you read other stories with this contrivance, Dan?
Stories, I don't know. I sometimes think of movies that do this, though. Sometimes like they even need to add it. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the Baz Luhrmann Great Gatsby, but it kind of ends with, I guess, one of the characters is writing the story. And it's always interesting, like when the framing device is like the person writing the story, especially if they like introduce the author as a character, like a real life author. I kind of go back and forth on whether that's just kind of silly or whether it actually works. But here I thought it was all right.
Yeah. I've encountered a couple instances like this. One is Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which we talked about a while back. And like that's one short story from a book of short stories that's also got Rip Van Winkle in it. But the framing is that Washington Irving is going around to different like inns, and he's like recording the local history. He's asking people, oh, what do you remember about the old days? Like, I think the book was in 1820, and he's like asking old timers about the era of the revolution. It's like the 1770s, like 50 years before. Oh, what stories do you know about that time? And writing them down. And we actually saw that in the like super faithful 1999 Hallmark adaptation that included like every single line.
Oh, that's right. Isn't that the one that made what's his name? What's the main character's name?
It made Ichabod look really bad. They were
Yeah,
very
like
it was an
loser.
Ichabod smear campaign. I mean, he's not a good guy. He's kind of an asshole, but if you read the story, I think you would see that he has some qualities that are positive, but
Right.
definitely it had an angle, that film treatment.
I just watched both Murder on the Orient Express movies, and like Kenneth Branagh, I think intentionally goes the opposite direction, goes perpendicular from like the common interpretation. But it is kind of funny to see like how different in tone, while both being very loyal to the text, you can be. I guess that's like the art of adaptation is like injecting a tone for the movie onto the text, you know?
Right. And my understanding is that this adaptation is pretty faithful to the Kipling story. I've read the plot summary, and it seems like beat for beat, it's there in the movie, but it could be different. I may have to go and read it. One person who did read it was director John Huston. Houston, not Huston. The first time we ever talked about him on the podcast, we said Huston.
Classic.
There's no O. It's just Hus.
Right. Houston, the city is HOU. But so that's what threw us off. But I guess it's the same pronunciation.
Right. He played Gandalf in the 1977 Hobbit. Anyway, he read this story like as a kid, and I guess he kind of always wanted to make this a movie. Like from the 50s, he was in talks to turn this into a movie, thinking different pairs of actors and just never quite getting it together until the 70s. Apparently, one of the pairings, there's like a whole list of names on Wikipedia of people he was considering for these roles. One of the names on the list was Peter O'Toole, which would have been cool. I mean, we saw him in Masada, but he could have done well in this part.
Yeah.
But eventually settled on Sean Connery and Michael Caine.
If that's like your B plan, or that's like what you have to settle for, pretty solid, you know?
Yeah, you could do worse.
I just watched an Alfred Hitchcock movie starring Sean Connery, which I didn't know existed until I watched it. It's called Marnie. It also stars Tippi Hedren, the star of The Birds. And that is like a fascinating, I think you'll either love it or hate it type movie.
Interesting. I might have to check that out. And as Dan said, this decrepit Michael Caine wanders in and talks to Rudyard Kipling, who's played by Christopher Plummer from Sound of Music, among other things. He's like, "Hey, Kipling, remember me? I met you in this office 3 years ago." And like the first, I don't know, third to, yeah, I guess about the first third of the movie is all like times that Michael Caine ran into Rudyard Kipling. So it kind of stretched my credulity whether they would keep coming back to talk to Kipling, because Michael Caine is a con man. He's like a criminal, and Christopher Plummer keeps putting the kibosh on the crimes that he's trying to commit. So it's like, why do you keep coming to Rudyard Kipling and reporting your crime spree?
It does sort of have an explanation, which is that they are all Masons. And so that becomes kind of a topic throughout the film, kind of less so at the end. It doesn't really circle back into much of a payoff. So that's like the thing that connects them and why they help each other out, is they're in the secret society together.
Right. And I would say it does have a payoff. Maybe not at the very end, but
that's true.
There's a lot in this movie that is set up and then builds to something.
That is a good point. There is one big payoff in the second half to them being that.
But yeah, so they've got these hail signs and code words and things where they can recognize each other. So the very first thing that happens in the movie is conman Michael Caine steals a pocket watch from Rudyard Kipling, but then he opens it up and it's got the compass and all-seeing eye icons of Freemasonry. And he's like, "Oh, bugger." I gotta return the property of a Mason. I can't in good conscience rob a fellow Mason. And so Michael Caine finds Rudyard Kipling on the train and gives him his watch back. And they have this conversation. And through talking with Rudyard Kipling, Michael Caine introduces his associate, Sean Connery. So Michael Caine's character is named Peachy Carnahan, and the Connery character is named Daniel Dravett. So I may just continue calling them by their actor names, but it's Peachy and Daniel.
Peachy Carnahan sounds like the name of a burlesque dancer or something like that.
But good excuse for people to yell, Carnahan!
Yeah, it's a good shouting name.
Mendoza! So they go around and we've already seen they're pickpockets, they're swindlers, they're blackmailers, they're interested in pulling schemes. And this is the era when Britain has dominion over India. India is part of the empire, it's a colony, it's the Raj.
I think that's really important to this story, both for like it's sort of in general, like the age of heroes, I would almost call it, like this kind of romantic era when you could just kind of set out and go do great things or whatever, and like, yeah, going out into India, which was like an exotic land, but also the dominion of the empire. But I think, I don't know how intentional it is. I would imagine at least somewhat intentional. This whole thing kind of reads as an investigation of imperialism to some extent. And like, I don't know. I found that to be an interesting lens into the story, and like how were British people thinking about the fact that they kind of come in and put dominion on these cultures that they view as exotic and less civilized,
Definitely. And I think it's pretty complicated how it's depicted because, yeah, there's this like gradient of civilization, and you can get away with more in the less governed places of the world. So in some ways, it's like a Wild West type thing. It's a frontier, and yet there's unscrupulous characters on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Like Carnahan and Dravett are not great guys, but then some of the people they encounter are kind of insidious too.
For sure.
It's like, there's people in the alleys of these streets who are just as kind of bloodthirsty and underhanded. And then there are people who are more noble too. So it's interesting. It's a mix. Also, India at this time, like there's some discussion of maps and things and places, and this is just an era and maybe a region of the world that we might not know very much about. But my understanding is that in this period in India, there was kind of like a hodgepodge of different government structures, because there was the part administered directly by Britain, but there were also parts of the subcontinent that were what are called princely states, which were like kind of autonomous regions that were ruled by princes called Rajas. And these were, like sub countries. Then they had kind of their own rules and their own degree to which they had to answer to England. And it was all, to me, as an outsider, kind of a mess. It seems like a hard thing to even keep track of.
Right. And yeah, I think Wild West is a good comparison because, there were laws in the Wild West, but it also was sort of like, it's not exactly the same, like you said, but there was an element of like self-organization of laws, like a sort of looser collective. It wasn't quite so structured, and navigating the extent to which one could get around the laws and the laws could be kind of fluid is part of the theme. Yeah.
Right. So Carnahan and Dravett keep popping up and talking to Kipling, and they will like announce, oh, well, next we're going to try this scheme. And at least one, they say, we're going to impersonate newspapermen and use that to get access to like a Raja, a government official. And Kipling's like, what? I'm a newspaperman. You're giving newspapermen a bad name. And so yeah, he like keeps shutting down these smaller schemes they're trying to pull, even though they are able to like get dirt on his newspaper editor, so he can't shut him down totally. They've like always got a way to weasel out of things and squiggle out like a slippery eel. But the big plan they hit on is they say, all right, India is getting too civilized for our taste. You know, it's a frontier, but it's we can see the way the wind is blowing, and it's blowing towards organization and bureaucracy and law and order, essentially, which is not the environment we thrive in. And so we are going to light out even further for the territories, and we're going to go to this place called Kafiristan. So, Dan, are you familiar with the term kafir?
No.
Okay, so this is one I learned recently because it was in the news. Again, from my understanding, we could probably rely on a subject matter expert for this episode, but what I have come to learn is that it basically means like heathen, but it's a term, I think it's in Arabic. So it's like from the Muslim point of view. So basically somebody who is not a Muslim, somebody who has not been converted, who does not have that faith. And so Pete Hegseth has kafir tattooed on his chest, among other like crusader iconography. So in the news of what do Pete Hegseth's tattoos mean, this came up in that discussion. You know, the Stan countries are the land of such and such a group. So the land of the Afghans, the land of the Kazakhs, the land of the Uzbeks, the land of the Turkmen. But Kafiristan is like no man's land. It's like we don't know what's out there. They're not even part of what's the term for the Muslim world, the Ummah. They're not like here be dragons, basically. This is uncharted territory. It's past the edge of the map, and it's basically a lawless land of warring tribes that very little is known about. I often bring up Dan Carlin on this podcast, just a really solid, informative podcaster. And something he's talked about in several episodes is the idea of one way to frame it is civilization and barbarians. That's kind of the old school way. A more nuanced way would be what he calls settled societies and societies that move around. Nomads, horse-based societies, and that the way that it has tended to be is that the settled societies often write things down earlier and more often. And so that's the historical record that we have to refer to, and less of that from the societies that are less rooted. But that a lot of what comes through in the historical account is tales of the interactions between these two different kinds of groups. And often there is like a boundary that forms between the two groups where it's kind of like an estuary, a mixing area, an area of hybridizing. And in these areas where there is kind of an interaction between these quote unquote barbarians and quote unquote civilized groups, there's like cultural exchange to a degree. It's like they start to get to know each other and maybe they pick up one another's habits. And what Dan Carlin said, I think this term comes from the Chinese talking about the Mongols, but they had a term for cooking the barbarians. Basically, the barbarians that live close by are more cooked, meaning that they adopt more of the habits of the society which is their neighbor. And this happened also like with the Germans who lived next to the Roman Empire. Basically, you start seeing them like adopting fashions and hairstyles and starting to learn one another's languages. and maybe they have a written language and things like that. So all of that to say that those things are kind of in play here. This idea of how does a group change once it starts interacting with this kind of, I don't know what you say, hegemonic society, imperialist, that's what you said, imperialist society next door. And how does that kind of shape these groups that they may not know much about, but they're starting to interact with for better or worse? And this idea that it's like a spectrum. It's like the people close by change more, and maybe you relate to them more, but the further out you go, they're less cooked. They're more raw. They may be more inscrutable to you, and you may have less common ground.
Yeah, that's definitely the thrust of the story here is like that you have characters and even kind of civilization levels that are like different levels of familiarity and different levels of like, I use the word exotic. One thing to say, I guess, I think is true of both of these movies to certain degrees is like, I think there's an element of like cultural insensitivity of like depicting these other cultures as undeveloped or barbaric from the Western perspective. That we're like as a Western people, we're trying to get more sophisticated in understanding these like collectively, and that both of these movies to different degrees and in different ways show cultures as less non-European cultures as like a little bit less civilized, I guess. But yes, in both cases also you have some characters who are kind of like bridging the gap between them on that gradient of like able to connect with both.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on either one movie, but would you agree that there are some similarities between these films?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I would venture that Road to El Dorado used this directly as an inspiration to some degree.
Yeah, I feel like the filmmakers must have seen this. Worth noting, the Wikipedia article on Man Who Would Be King shouts out Road to El Dorado. The Wikipedia article on Road to El Dorado does not mention Man Who Would Be King.
Interesting.
But so who can say where Kafiristan is on the map? It's like out beyond Afghanistan, north of Afghanistan. I think it's interesting that Carnahan and Dravitt, their background is as soldiers in the British Army. And so they've fought in Afghanistan. So they know it a little bit. And also, they have this military training and they're going to use it to their own ends. So maybe not the most positive portrayal of military men.
Yeah, but although I do think that does continue to tie back into like this is an interrogation of the colonial process to some degree, like coming in with military power as that being like a way to show that you're stronger and better than the people who you are coming into their territory, you know?
Right. And this had me thinking of another line from Dan Carlin. I mean, he didn't originate it. He was quoting a British poem from this age of the empire. And the poem goes, "Whatever happens, we have got the Mauser gun, and they have not." And the Mauser gun basically being a Gatling gun, an early machine gun. And they're going into these regions of the world where they don't have that. Africa and India and things like that. So it's technological superiority that's facilitating these takeovers, and that's something we're going to see in this movie. Also interesting that this movie's from 1975, so I believe the Soviet-Afghan War had not started yet, but the nickname of Afghanistan is Graveyard of Empires. And it's because you go in there and you get involved in a war and it's a quagmire.
Interesting.
It's like you're not getting out unscathed. And they say maybe this is what undid the British Empire. This is what undid the Soviet Empire and perhaps has undone the American Empire.
You haven't seen the new movie Friendship. Have you?
No, what's that one about?
It's stars Tim Robinson, the guy from I Think You Should Leave.
55 burgers.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of built around his awkward person wavelength. It's a very funny movie. It's kind of spoofing the A24 style because it's this thriller about how is he going to be able to befriend his neighbor? Like, can he make an adult male friend? Which, there's a lot of discourse that it's hard for people to make friends when you become an adult, particularly men. It's kind of a parody of that. His life unravels as he tries to befriend Paul Rudd, like in all these kind of outrageous sort of ways. But there's a scene where a character gives a speech at a party and he ends it by saying, and I'll just say this, we should have stayed in Afghanistan. And I've seen this referenced a whole bunch of times on social media since, but it's kind of like it comes out of left field and it's a funny little stinger.
Yeah, I mean it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It's complex. Dravitt and Carnahan do head out to the hinterlands. They're going to Kafiristan, head up north. And so like a third of the movie is them traveling, them doing these death-defying feats of traveling across the glaciers and traveling over the Himalayan mountains and going through the deserts. And the photography is really nice. Like this whole movie, I was thinking they really went and did the thing. I guess they filmed this in Morocco.
It does feel like a sort of tribute to like the David Lean epics or Treasure of Sierra Madre, like the sort of classical, huge scope epics. And now, Brian, I don't know if you've actually said it yet, but I think they announced their goal before they leave.
Oh yes, they lay it all out. They're telling all their crime plans to Rudyard Kipling. So what do they say, Dan?
So basically, their idea is that they're going to go out to this place and they are going to use their military skills and their ability to strategize and such to manipulate these various tribes to war against each other and come out on top as kings is the gist of it. So like they personally will be the military saviors and will become the kings of this land.
Yes. So rather ambitious.
I'm going to walk in there and become the king. It is ambitious.
But that's what happens in the movie. So yeah, they finally get to Kafiristan and they find like the first people they find, it was kind of Ten Commandments-y because it's like these women at a water hole and these brigands come and attack the women. And so Caine and Connery shoot these brigands and like kill all of them with their rifles. But they take one captive and head into the town and they're like, "Hey, we got this criminal from a rival group, and if you let us train your soldiers and bolster your armies, we'll get rid of all your enemies for you." And so yeah, they suck up to this one warlord and they help him. They train his rabble of townspeople to be like a British rifle company, and then lead them into battle against their neighboring tribes. And it's like each tribe hates every other tribe, which is kind of I got to move away from saying interesting. I say interesting all the time, but like a notable feature of tribe life is it seems like they all hate each other. It's not a monolith of a culture usually. And this is something that happened all throughout the history of colonization, is like one neighbor group would be played against the other neighbor group of natives, wherever it was. It was like this happened in South America and North America with the native, what we call Native Americans, the different tribes. It's like, and it kept happening. It's like in the Revolution, there's Indian tribes siding with the British, and there's Indian tribes siding with the Continentals. And then in the Civil War, same thing. It's like there were tribes that joined the Confederacy. In the War of 1812, it's like there were some who were playing the British off of the Americans. And so there's always allegiances that can be formed various ways.
Well, one point that I would take from what you said and reframe it slightly differently is you said basically they all hate each other. But I think the important thing is A, like you said, they're not all a monolith. But B, I guess a way that this feels kind of like this movie feels kind of regressive is that it kind of depicts what you're talking about. But I think, like you said, the real life is more complicated. Basically, if they operated independently, they could have different relations with all sorts of the different tribes and the different groups. Like maybe a peace with some, allies with others, rivals with others, at war with others and stuff. So like, I don't know. I feel like it's a stereotype of showing them as like more barbaric, that they all hate each other and they'll kill anyone who's not them, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I think, yeah, that's how it's presented in the film, which may not be reality. It's probably not reality.
Right.
And specifically, it's what these guys went in there looking for. So they've found it.
Yeah.
And the moral of the story is this is not a good way to go about your affairs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's interesting that I never found, other than the fact that they're like charismatic, likable leads, I never found them very sympathetic. They're like, I would call them anti-heroes to some extent.
Yeah. These are not good guys. These are guys who are pushing their luck, looking for more and more and more, and eventually the house of cards is going to collapse. So what do you think I was thinking of, Dan?
Breaking Bad,
I was thinking of Breaking Bad, yeah. This has that energy. It's got like an element of comedy too. Like Michael Caine is making quips.
Right.
A lot of what Michael Caine did was making me chuckle.
Oh yeah, yeah. It is. There's like an element of like them being British guys, or I guess Scotland. So Scotland is part of Great Britain, but not part of England, or do I have that wrong?
That is, yes.
Okay.
That's right. I'm sure it could get more nuanced as far as what's the United Kingdom, what's Britannia. It's like shillings and pence. It's just you got too many synonyms.
I'm sure Andrew
Thrash has got to give us a lesson.
Exactly. But it is funny just like hearing them quip through. Like you said, just talking in very British ways. They're doing essentially war crimes, and they're like just kind of joking through it together.
But when they take this captive to the local warlord, they luck out. Like there's a string of coincidences that's helping them along, because one of the people at this encampment, this little village, speaks English and has a pro-British mentality. He's a Gurkha soldier. And this is just a whole other wrinkle. I think Gurkhas are from Nepal, but they were soldiers in the British Army. So Nepalese British soldiers. And this guy introduces himself as Billy Fish, which is like the nickname that was given to him by the British soldiers that he had previously worked with. But because of he has a funny way of talking. He's like, "Oh, much misfortune, Sahib." One thing led to another, and the British guys that he came here with are all perished. So he's fallen in with these villagers. Basically, he is going to act as the interpreter. So he's explaining the British guys to this warlord whose name is Utah, and he's relaying what Utah says to Peachy and Daniel. One of the things that this tribe does that marks them out as barbarians is they play polo with their enemies' heads. Decapitate the enemy and then hit it around with the mallets while they're on horseback.
Right.
And this like keeps happening. It's kind of a recurring thread.
And the tone of it plays differently at different moments.
Right. Sometimes it's a punchline. But this idea that when you're the king, you don't keep your head for very long. And so, yeah, like they said in their plan, the two con men do train a regiment of these villagers, and they lead them in battle against the rival town. next door, and they best the army, but the way they do it has more wrinkles, more twists of fate, because Daniel is leading a charge. This is Sean Connery, and he gets an arrow lodged in what looks like his chest. It's actually like stuck in his bullet belt, his bandolier. And so it doesn't kill him, doesn't even hurt him. It's just like sticking out, and he picks it out and throws it away. But everybody, the two sides, both sides notice this and like throw themselves on the ground because they see Sean Connery now as a god. It's like, oh, he's bulletproof basically. So he must have some special juju, and so he is destined to be our leader.
They kind of took a leap on this one a little too quickly. I feel like I would need more proof when I'm bowing down and being like, I worship you, for like one bullet hit. Like, I mean, do they not have the concept of armor here? Like garments that deflect damage? I don't know.
Yeah, it goes really fast. I think they could have had one more traditional battle that they win, and then have this happen in the second battle. But I guess that would have just made the movie longer.
And it already has a very long setup. It's like half the movie is getting you to the promise of the premise.
Right. And I do like, though, that this is kind of set up, because there were mentions that nobody from the West had been to this country before besides Alexander the Great, since Alexander the Great. Like he blew through with his army and conquered the area, but since then, no Westerners. These things are mentioned in discussion early on with Rudyard Kipling, and then have payoff later on, because what Billy Fish says is there are stories in this region that Alexander will come again, and they have kind of this like over the centuries corrupted version of Alexander. They call him Sikander. They say Sikander will come again. He will like be reincarnated. He will send his son. And so it's a little bit like Buzz Lightyear becoming Zurg.
Right.
Robots can't quite say Alexander. So he's the second coming of Alexander the Great, apparently. And so we jump ahead a little bit in time, that they've kind of aided some other armies in defeating their foes, but that a big part of their success owes to this new reputation that Sean Connery has as a god, to the point that pretty soon armies aren't even fighting anymore. It's like they show up and bow down and offer tribute. And pretty soon, Daniel and a little bit Peachy, but Peachy is clearly falling into second banana status, have this little empire that they're building. And when they've got the army to peak size, it's pretty impressive. There must be like 500 actors here.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of in little platoons from like what you can tell are the different towns, because it's like a dozen men have got one style of costume, and then the next dozen have got a different style, and they've all got these like different instruments that they're banging and tooting, and it was kind of like Seussian. I was thinking of like Dr. T or the Grinch, the way they've got this marching band of all the strange instruments.
Right. Playing up the sort of quirky, exotic flavor.
Yeah. And, but now the high priest shows up to run some tests. Because if they're going to get on board with this program, this new Sikander guy, it's like, we gotta be sure, guys. Gotta run him through the gauntlet. And so this is great. I love this. And so the head priest is this guy. Billy Fish introduces him as Kafu Salim, and then immediately Sean Connery and Michael Caine are calling him Kafuzalam. and he's the one who's going to administer the verification. But to do it, they got to come to the holy city, and they got to leave their army and their weapons behind.
Yeah, so I like this because now it's like on their wits, you know?
Yeah. So Michael Caine, because at first Sean Connery is like, well, hell no, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. And Michael Caine, who again is kind of the point of view character, the one that we know better and hear from more, he says, listen, Danny, we got to do it. They got us over a barrel. Because if they like second guess the chief priest and say, we're not going to do what the priest cast wants, everybody in the empire is going to say, well, why are the gods disagreeing with the priests? What's up? Why do the priests not have faith in the gods?
Right.
So the two con men don't really have an out here. They're like, we got to go along with this.
And
So
that's like a recurring thing in both of them is like, how far can you push it to say, I'm a god, I don't have to prove anything, you should just obey me, as opposed to like actually showing off your prowess.
yeah. Yeah, at some point, it's another one that I kept thinking of was the Munster story,
Mm-hmm.
King for Burning, where it's the cult leader takes over the city, and at a certain point, they're like, okay, work your miracles. And he's like, so about that. They do get another lucky break because they get to the holy city, and the priest says, okay, let's test the arrow again. And they strip off Sean Connery's clothes. They're just going to load him full of arrows. And luckily, though, when they rip his clothes off, he's wearing a Freemason necklace. And another seed that was planted early on was that actually we think Freemasonry could be really ancient. We don't know, but there's rumors it goes all the way back to Bible times. Sure enough, turns out Alexander the Great was a Freemason here. And so he's got Freemason icons like in the cornerstone of the holy city.
So this is the payoff on the introduction of the Freemasons.
Yeah, really lucky break. Also, they have this god, this statue of the god in the city that has one big looming eye, which is like the Freemasonry icon.
Right. Kind of tying those together. That's another thing that ties these two movies together is they both require some really big lucky breaks for their schemes to work.
Yes. So now the priests are in. They're won over. Okay, this is the guy. This is Sikander too. And they let him into the treasure room and they put the crown on his head. And so now Sean Connery is the king. And it starts going to his head because like only one of them could be the king. One wonders how, if this was their plan all along to be the kings, it's like not a lot of places have two kings at once, right? It's usually you got one king, but we got two dudes here. And so now Peachy is kind of chafing because he's the major domo or whatever. He's like the general of the armies.
Right, but then Connery's like, no, listen, we just got to do this for a little bit, and then we'll be able to get away with all of our. Or no, wait, I forget exactly. Now I'm getting that mixed up with El Dorado. So what is their end game at this point?
Yeah, no, you're right. That's essentially what happens, and they say we just have to stick around until winter is over, and then we can take our gold and leave.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it seemed pretty wintry when they were getting there. Like they were going through blizzards and causing avalanches and stuff. So I don't really know about that. But there's also mention of like the monsoon. So that's the reasoning they give is weather. Weather is bad. And so we'll wait till the weather is better. Then we'll leave. And like what we see of Sean Connery governing seems to be fairly even-handed. Like there's a scene of him kind of holding court and like people coming to him with their problems and like Solomon, he's dispensing his wisdom and like the solutions that he gives seem to be fair and well received.
Right. I think that's part of the like confronting this idea of what value and what drawbacks does imperial colonialism have on its people. So like to some extent, yes, they're exploiting the people, getting their wealth, but they're like also bringing, oh, he's like, hey, we can build a bridge here. Let me show you how we build a bridge, because that's something you have to do in the military too, I guess.
Yeah, it's like
And
infrastructure and better communication and, unity of a kind. And so it's like, yeah, we see those pluses, but he's also kind of going power hungry.
right.
And one of the things is he meets this, like all the towns are coming and paying tribute, and one of the town tribute groups has this beautiful woman in it. And he's immediately smitten with this woman and is like, "Oh, I want this woman." And she is not into it. She's resistant, and Billy Fish explains that this is because the understanding, the spirituality of these people says that gods and mortals can't mix and like explicitly cannot have sex because the partner, the human partner in that coupling would be destroyed. It's like the woman would explode, sir.
A couple of things on this. One, I was a little confused because didn't she like sort of throw herself at him at one scene, like when they first met? Or was that a different person?
I think that was a different woman.
Okay. So that's just to play up they refuse their oath is to not have sex until they have completed their objective.
Yes, we didn't say that. They've got this contract at the start. We won't have sex, we won't drink alcohol, and we won't dabble with women until we're kings. Again, ambitious.
The other thing is this woman, I think I gotta confess, I got a couple of the people mixed up, but I think this is the woman. Did you see who she was played by?
Yes, so she's Michael Caine's wife, which is pretty, I was surprised.
Yeah.
So I guess she's an Indian actress who had been doing some acting in London, and Michael Caine like saw her in something and then sought her out.
Right. And they've been married since 1973. So that was just a couple years before this was made, but they're still together. That's over 50 years of marriage.
Right. And so that kind of adds a dimension to these interactions between these two men and this woman.
Great point.
And with Sean Connery being the one who's like lusting after her, and Michael Caine being like, "Pump the brakes, dude."
Yeah, trying to also pump the brakes on his jealousy till they get their power and wealth.
Yeah. So the time draws on, and they're like about to leave the city. The weather has cleared, the winter has ended, and now it's time to go. And Michael Caine has got all his mules loaded up with his gold and says, "Let's go. I'm ready to go." And Sean Connery has this great monologue where he's like, "No, dude, I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna be the king and I'm gonna track down that woman and she's going to sire my progeny and we are going to build this place into a proper nation." What does he say? "With a flag and an anthem. And one day I shall stand before the queen, not as a subject, but as an equal. And she will offer me the Order of the Garter." And Michael Caine is just disbelieving.
What the hell are you talking about, dude?
Like he literally rolls around on the floor laughing. "What'll you do?" "Oh, I'm shaking in me boots."
And I think there is like an element of an idea here. It's like, okay, exploiting and then leaving and letting the people do their own thing, or like staying and try to integrate and build them up into what your vision of what civilization is. But I agree, this scene was one of the best in the movie. I think if it's the scene I'm thinking of, it opens with like Sean Connery's like laying down when Michael Caine walks in, and then just like the contrast of like the far off look of dreaminess on Sean Connery's eyes and the way that he's talking, and Michael Caine's exasperated, like trailing behind him, like, "What are you talking about, dude?" It's pretty good.
It's very good. Yeah. And definitely like a situation that's going to kind of come up also in Road to El Dorado, where one wants to go and one wants to stay.
Hmm.
And like how tenable is this long term? But also I think it kind of sets up the idea that any nation only exists because people say it does. Like the Queen of England is only important because a lot of people agree that she is.
Right.
It's all a human construct. Even the most powerful countries are human constructs.
And that is interesting. Like one of the ways that they like their barometers for success is, does the queen acknowledge us? Would the queen want to meet us? And I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's almost like they're playing house. It's they're setting up their understanding of what a country is. But Michael Caine says, "I'm done with this, man. Forget you. I'm getting while the getting is good. I'm going with my gold and my mules and all my riflemen to get through the Khyber Pass." But by this point, Sean Connery has ordered all the monks to bring him this woman. And they, again, explicitly protest. They say, we don't do that. Gods don't marry women. It's not allowed. But he says, you better do it, dude. You better listen to me, follow my orders, you bunch of monks. And they say, fine. And they bring the woman to town. And this like final 20 minutes of the movie, I was biting my nails. I was on the edge of my seat. I'm like, something bad is gonna happen here.
Right.
Because they're telegraphing it. There's the like sirens are going off, howls on the wind, and just the editing. It's like that God statue is looming over everything. It's like and there's only 15 minutes left in the movie. It's like there's a lot of plot to get through, but it's like something is gonna give here.
And at one point, they're like having this conversation about what's going to happen next. And in the background, they're playing skull soccer. So it's like, oh, like just setting up more imagery that like things are not going to be going well. And we know, of course, from the opening that things will not go well. But it's like, how is it going to happen? But I had a hunch it was going to be centered around this wedding, particularly when Sean Connery's like, okay, well, you can go. That's fine. We'll go separately. But will you do this one last thing for me? Will you stay till the end of my wedding? He's like, oh, sure. What's the harm in staying for just one more day?
So this is a case where, like with the substance, I was kind of like stomping my feet and clapping my hands. And so we get to this wedding, and they process the woman down the aisle, and she's in like a trance. And she's being pushed along by this group of women in black veils. They all look like that horror movie that just came out. What was that? The Woman in the Yard?
Woman in the Yard.
I haven't watched that one yet.
You wouldn't believe the premise.
She's in the yard.
There is a woman, an unexpected woman, and she's unexpectedly in the yard.
Yeah, but she's like a scary woman. Also, I admire, I don't know if I quite agree with, but I admire any horror filmmaker who decides to set it during the day.
Right.
I think Midsummer is also like that.
Yes. Yep. Which I like that movie, by the way. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. Which one? Woman in the Yard?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I haven't seen either of those, but I should. They push this woman whose name is Roxanne down the aisle, and she gets up to the plinth, and she kind of leans back, and Sean Connery leans in to kiss her, and then she bites him real hard on the cheek. And then he's got blood running down his face. And what we've learned is that gods don't bleed. That was
Right.
what started the whole thing, is gods don't bleed. And Kafuzalam gets this look on his face and starts, yelling in the incomprehensible language. And so we know he's not happy.
Right.
The jig is up. And just like these last 10 minutes of the movie, or maybe not even that much, 5 minutes, I was geeking.
Yeah.
Because Michael Caine says, oh, Billy, what's he saying? Of course, we know what he's saying. But it's like, he says not God, but man. He knows. And so then Michael Caine grabs with one hand, like grabs Billy by the shoulder, grabs Sean Connery by the shoulder, and starts power walking them out of the holy city. And he's
Just keep walking.
He's pumping his legs, but just as a walk, while the word is spreading through the crowd. And this was so funny because he says something like, so captions said different things in different. I watched this movie 3 times this week.
Wow.
One said it was like they twigged it, and another one said they tricked us, which would make more sense, I guess. But I like imagining this is some British slang. It could have just been they tricked us. But the way I heard it, the way I first read it was they twigged it. Let's brass it. And so basically we got to go, and we got to go now. Just go.
Right.
Yeah, they've twigged it, Danny. You've had it. Let's brass it. So they're walking out, and like they just walk out of the door, and everybody's running on their heels. And so they're in this chaotic retreat. And Danny and Peachy and Billy have their like rifle company that's firing back over their shoulders and like still killing a lot of guys, but they're outnumbered. They can't keep this up. And it's almost dreamlike the way this fighting retreat was, where it's like they're fighting, but they're clearly being consumed.
Yeah. Surrounded and yeah. But there is a comic element because they're hurrying out of there and they're like firing their guns behind them.
Sean Connery is still like, "Oh, we'll get him. We'll turn the tide." Mules are falling off of mountains and gold is spilling everywhere. It's very like, I like endings like this where the treasure is being lost. McTeague has this. It's like trying until the last moment to cling to the gold, and it's not gonna work. Eventually, all the ammo is expended, and everybody is consumed in the mob, including like Billy Fish dies fighting, and then Peachy and Daniel are surrounded. And the final exchange is like Sean Connery says, "Well, I'm sorry I got you killed. Do you forgive me?" And Michael Caine says, "Yep." Like, I don't know. I think I would have some regrets.
Well, this is like so I recently watched this documentary from like 1924 or something like that about the expedition to the South Pole by, what's that guy's name?
I always get the Polar Explorers mixed up.
Is it Robert Falcon Scott? Yes, Robert Falcon Scott. This guy who went to this documentary about a trip to the South Pole led by Robert Falcon Scott, who's this British guy. And he ended up dying in his attempt, but we recovered his journals, including he like journaled up until the minute he died practically. And like his last journal entry is like this very British elegy to like, it is okay to fail, to die, so long as you stand strong for your fellow Britishmen. I was like, I kind of disagree with that. I think it's not okay to die. I think I would try to not do that, but I don't know. Some of that energy here too. It's like this sort of British patriotism that has this sort of detached air to it.
Yeah, the stiff upper lip. And so the mob forces Sean Connery out onto this rope bridge that he built, kind of saying, "To hell with this whole enterprise. Throw out the baby with the bathwater." And they chop down the bridge, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom style. And Sean Connery goes flying down into the abyss. Apparently, they had a real guy, like a real stuntman, do this.
Wow.
And according to Wikipedia, again, not always the most reliable source, it said it was like an 80-foot fall onto a bunch of mattresses. And that's crazy. Like, why not just do a dummy? Because we don't even see that much of it.
Right.
But we do see like a guy go flip down and like fall flipping twice and fall a long way.
I definitely would have assumed it was a dummy or something.
But we know that Michael Caine is around to tell the story. And so, well, how did that happen? and he says that he was crucified, like nailed up to a tree, still has holes in his hands, but he survived like for a day and a night. And I guess they thought, oh, that was enough. We Somebody's got to tell the story anyhow. And so they cut him down, let him go, and he wanders back all the way through the wilderness to get to Rudyard Kipling and account, be the chronicler for the movie. And I guess he went down into the gorge too, because he still has Sean Connery's head.
Yeah, somehow he got that's like the final image as he pulls out the skull of the king. It still has like that crown that they made for him on it.
Yep. So they made it out with one piece of treasure. Well, one of them made it out.
Right.
And that's The Man Who Would Be King from 1975. Broad thoughts on that one, Dan? Anything specific, or shall we return once we've covered the other film?
I think we've said most of our points. The tone is very interesting because it's kind of comic and kind of dark and kind of adventurous. And it's like kind of satisfying in how it's a blend of those things and how you're both cheering for their downfall, but you're also kind of sympathetic with them because it's Michael Caine and Sean Connery. But yeah, overall I liked it for sure.
Yeah, me too. That brings us to our second film, which we've kind of been shouting out a few times. And as with other episodes where we do violent ends, there's a lot of structural overlap. Like, that's kind of the point. But this second movie is The Road to El Dorado from 2000. So I remember renting this back in the day from Blockbuster. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it pretty shortly after it came out. And you said you think you've seen parts of it? Maybe you watched it at one point?
Yeah, it may have been on in my house at one point or something, but I definitely hadn't seen it all the way through.
So, Road to El Dorado, the directors, just because I want to say the name, they are Eric Bebo Bergeron and Don Paul.
Good names. It could have been the names of the protagonists.
Yeah. Yeah, good old Bebo. And I remember really liking this movie when I first saw it. I don't know why. I don't know why it stuck with me so much. It's got some real talent behind it, though. Like, it's written by Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, who wrote Aladdin, wrote Shrek, wrote Pirates of the Caribbean. And then the music team is the Lion King team. Elton John and Tim Rice and Hans Zimmer. So, like, they got together some names for this.
I do think it's a worse. Just the soundtrack is not as memorable. I mean, part of it is that I think there's some where the characters sing, but some of it is also, it's like Tarzan, where
Yes, it's much more like Tarzan, or there was another movie we talked. Well, maybe, or maybe not. Prince of Egypt, they almost always sing the songs. Like, the characters sing the songs.
Right.
This is more taking the Tarzan route, where you've got a celebrity singer singing over, like, montages. Although, it's not totally that way, because they do sing during Tough to Be a God.
Right. Which is also like Tarzan, where there's a little
they
bit
sing
of
in Trash in the Camp, yeah.
I guess Toy Story's like that too, with Randy Newman.
Yeah. The track that I really like, though, still to this day, is Trail We Blaze. That one gets me pumped. I wanted to quote it when I did my graduation speeches, but I ended up not. But when he says, pioneers of maximum audacity whose resumes show that we are just the team to live where others merely dream, building up a head of steam on the trail we blaze. I like that. It's not the Lion King. This whole thing is not the Lion King. It's not at that level. I don't think anyone would tell you that it's at that level.
No, but it is. It looks like a solid execution of the style circa late 90s.
Right. It's a good team. It's a team of real artisans.
And I don't know if they had the same technology that Disney did, but the animation has that mostly hand drawn. There's like a certain brightness to it, but also it includes a little bit of CGI.
Right. Yeah, I noticed there's like some crowd shots and they got the weird little like doll people walking around similar to like the wide shots of Titanic,
Mm.
the folks walking on the deck. But the premise of this one is there's two con men named Miguel and Tulio who are like gamblers and card sharks in early 1500s Spain. And they're voiced by who? One is Kevin Kline, which is not a name I recognize, and one is Kenneth Branagh, which is definitely a name I recognize.
But Kevin Kline is, you've surely seen him in something.
I figured he had to be somebody, but I'm not familiar.
I watched A Fish Called Wanda recently, and he's in that, and he's very, very good in that. Like, I think he got nominated for an Oscar, but it's just an out of control performance. He's kind of playing like a British stereotype of what an American is, but it's very funny. But he's been in other stuff too. I'm trying to think. I'm going to pull up his Wikipedia, his IMDb. I'm sure he's been in other stuff we've seen because it's a name I know. He was in Ricky and the Flash. Did not see that.
I don't even know what that is.
No Strings Attached. Definitely maybe. Okay, you know what? He might have been in some things. We can say that.
But no Gilderoy Lockhart like Kenneth Branagh. So these two guys, they are cheating at dice specifically when the movie opens, and during this match, this crapshoot, what have you, they win a map to El Dorado, which I need a prequel about where this map came from, because how the heck did that make it to Spain?
That's a great point. Yeah.
Who made this map? I mean, presumably the locals, I guess, made it, but because no Spaniards have been there yet, I don't know.
But then how did it get to Spain? Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. But there you go. They're a long way there already because they got this map that it shows how to get there. And then they get found out that they're using loaded dice and they run off. And I think you've mentioned in some of your reviews, Dan, that like a hallmark of animation the last few decades, like especially I think you pointed out that it happens a lot in the Illumination movies, is there's just like very kinetic chases. It's like that's a big part of the runtime.
Right. For sure.
It doesn't happen all the time in this one, but this is a moment when they're definitely like showing off how the camera is moving through the streets, and everything has a physics to it.
Another thing that to me this kind of points out this early stretch is you mentioned that the Aladdin connection, just like Aladdin and also Hercules has like almost a screwball comedy pace and like character writing where they're not exactly heroic, but you're still kind of rooting for them and you love watching them, and they're always getting into trouble. This has that in spades. It's a very funny film, jokey film.
Right. Yeah, my dad responded pretty positively. This week, I mentioned I rewatched the movies, not just once, but I watched them both with my dad, and he actually had a pretty positive reaction to this one. But you're right, it has some of the same beats as Aladdin with the one jump ahead where he's a ne'er-do-well and he's a rogue, but you
Right.
want to follow him. And it reminds me of there's a Star Kids show that's kind of a mix of Wicked and Aladdin called Twisted.
Mm-hmm.
And the gist is that Jafar is actually a good guy trying to protect the Sultan and the government from the influence of this insidious thief. And the way that the Star Kid producers are like their pitch, they say Aladdin is the most able-bodied man in Agrabah, and he doesn't have a job. Which is, ever since, that's what I've thought about.
That's kind of funny. Speaking, one more Aladdin tangent here. I just watched for the first time the I think it's 24 or 25, Douglas Fairbanks, Thief of Baghdad. So are you familiar with this at all?
I've heard about it. I heard that the 90s version draws a lot from it.
Yeah, there are like scenes that are like exactly what's in Aladdin. And a lot of the design is clearly pulled from this. So I was doing a lot of the pointing at the screen meme when I was watching it.
What about Thief and the Cobbler? You ever seen that one?
No, I still haven't seen that one yet.
That's another one that, because he was the animator, Richard Williams, is that right?
Yeah, is this the project he worked on for like years?
Yeah,
and
like
years?
40 years, like his whole life he was tinkering with this. And then finally, it got like rushed out by one of the studios in some version. There's like multiple cuts,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of similarity with Aladdin, which honestly, over such a long time frame, it's like, they've been telling Aladdin stories for a long time.
right.
If you watch Lincoln, his son goes to see Aladdin. Like while mom and dad were watching Our American Cousin, Tad Lincoln was watching Aladdin.
That's funny. I listened to a director's commentary over The Thief of Baghdad, and he said in the early 20s, a new translation of 1001 Nights was released in the US. And Douglas Fairbanks read it and was like, this kind of rips. I want to make this into a movie. So I think it got more American awareness after that.
That's cool. Fairbanks also popularized Zorro.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the USC film campus, and it was founded by, like, their film program, founded by Douglas Fairbanks. And there's a fountain of him as Zorro.
Oh, wow. I'm working on a review of The Thief of Baghdad, and I spent about half of it talking about Fairbanks because he's a really interesting guy.
Miguel and Tulio take off from this game, this dice game, and chase scene through the streets. And like Aladdin, they jump off a wall and land down in barrels. The barrels immediately get scooped up and loaded onto a ship. And now they're trapped on Cortez's voyage to the New World. Hernan Cortez was the conquistador who defeated the Aztecs, basically took over Mexico. And he's voiced by Pete.
Right.
It's Jim Cummings, who weirdly voices like 4 characters in this movie. I mean, not unheard of for him to do that. He's one of those voice actors that just gets used and reused and reused. But
Yeah.
Considering he's like a prominent character in the movie, I thought it was strange that you keep hearing his voice other places.
Right. Also Winnie the Pooh these days.
Right. And so eventually Cortez finds them and like throws them in the brig, but there's lots of antics and like silly capers. So they get the help of the horse, Cortez's horse, to break out of the brig and steal a rowboat, and they like head off to sea to an uncertain fate. What ultimately happens is they end up beating the ship to shore in the New World.
Nice coincidence that they're running away from the cops immediately after getting a map to El Dorado, and they coincidentally end up on a ship that's headed right there. There's a few coincidences in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's, what does Sean Connery say? There's destiny in this. Similar dialogue even where Miguel and Tulio are adrift in the boat and they think they're gonna die, and they're like, would you have changed anything? No, because you made my life an adventure and you made my life rich. Which By the way, all the top reviews on Letterboxd are about how gay Miguel and Tulio are.
Yeah, both these movies have and they were roommates energy to them.
Yep.
In both cases, we'll see one of them gets jealous and hits a turning point when the other strikes up an interest in a female.
Right. And they even have the discussion of like, we're not going to mess around with women. We're in the middle of a con and you don't do that, I guess.
Together. Yeah.
I don't know where that rule comes from. I'm not familiar with that rule.
No.
But watching The Man Who Would Be King, there just kept being beats. It's like, wait a minute, I know this movie. But they start following the map, the convenient map. Did you ever play Pokemon Snap, Dan?
It was an N64 one, right?
Yeah, it was a Pokemon photography game on the N64.
I think I watched my friend play it a couple times, but I never played it myself.
It's a fun game. It's short. And one of the things that's hidden in it, so it's like an on-rails shooter game, like House of the Dead, except instead of shooting things, you're taking pictures. So you're on a track going through this world and things are happening around you. And depending on how you trigger things, the path can change a little bit. And you can like get bonuses and things. Anyway, my point is one of the things you're looking for is these landmarks that look like Pokemon. And if you photograph all of them, it unlocks the secret level. And that's basically what's happening here is they've got like pictures on the map that relate to interesting natural formations.
Mm-hmm.
Like a waterfall that looks like a crying face or a cave that looks like a dragon head and stuff.
I thought that was pretty cool because on the map itself, it's like it looks like an actual dragon you might walk past, but then the feature is just kind of shaped like a dragon, but it's a natural feature.
Yeah, I like this montage. And where it ultimately leads them is to this big waterfall that seems to block the way. But then this native beauty comes running out of under the waterfall. And she's followed by a bunch of like guards. And so the city of El Dorado is hidden behind this waterfall. And when these two groups come together and they see Miguel and Tulio, just like the other movie, it's like they fall on their faces because there's this big like frieze, this big mural on the wall that depicts the gods who created El Dorado in the little like prologue of the movie. And they kind of sort of look like Miguel and Tulio and also the horse that they have. And I think it's kind of interesting to think about the Columbian Exchange, which is, you know, the things that were introduced by one culture into the other and vice versa when Europeans first started coming to the Americas, at least long term. You know, there was the Vikings up in Newfoundland, but as far as like an ongoing presence that went back and forth. And largely, I mean, I think both movies are kind of about this. Like, what are the effects of this cultural exchange? You know, largely it was one-sided, and it was not a positive thing for the natives of the New World. But one thing that came that was never here before in the Americas was the horse. They didn't have horses here. And so I would imagine that the very first time you ever saw a horse, it would be pretty surprising.
Here, what is that thing? Looks like a mythical creature.
Exactly. So the Eldoradians, they usher Miguel and Tulio into the city and welcome them as gods.
A couple of the important Eldoridians. Can we shout them out here?
Please.
So one is the king. I guess he's a king, chief, something along those lines. And he's a stocky fella, but gives off friendly vibes, jolly vibes. I was thinking of, did you ever watch the Nickelodeon show Rocket Power?
Oh yeah, was this Tito?
Yeah, he's like the Polynesian guy who is really friendly. And then there's the one that looks most like a racial caricature, so you can probably presume that he's evil. like Jafar, and that's the priest. So he's kind of got he also has like intense eyebrow action. He's given evil vibes from the start.
Yeah, he's literally like huffing psychedelic powders and stuff when we meet him.
And so he's the high priest. I forget his name.
His name is Zekel Khan, and he's voiced by Armand Assante, who I think we last saw as Odysseus in The Odyssey.
Oh, same guy. Did not place that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have placed it, but I love that movie.
Yeah.
And the chief is Edward James Olmos, who is an actor I've seen in a few things. And there was a joke in, I think it was 30 Rock, that for some event they hired an Edward James Olmos impersonator named Edward James Almost.
Such an obscure joke. I love it.
Par for the course on that show.
The last one of note is Shell. And she is, I believe you called her an exotic beauty, something along those lines, native beauty. And she is the friendly woman who sees through them right away and is a romantic interest and is drawn very curvy and revealing clothes.
Right, probably animated with one hand. But yeah, she's the combination of Billy Fish and the Roxanne character. She's like both in one.
Right.
Because she's going to be their interpreter. She, yeah, immediately finds out that they're just humans. They're not actually gods. But she's going to play along for, I guess, a cut of the treasure. It's kind of vague. She says she wants to explore the world. I guess the paradise of gold is not enough.
I was wondering if there was like a you know how sometimes in kids movies they don't say the thing but you kind of get the thing. Like, is she in trouble because she did something bad that like she slept with someone she shouldn't have or something like that. But I never picked up on it if it is actually there.
No, it was
it's just like, oh, she's in trouble and she wants to leave and she's trying to get out of here. And maybe she's not in trouble. It was kind of unclear. It seemed like she was on the run.
Right, so she had stolen something. She had like stolen a piece of gold and was running off with it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
You know, her excuse is, oh, I told in a dream to signal the gods by taking them this treasure. And so
Right.
I guess the idea is that she too is a con person. It's like she is a bit of a scoundrel as well.
Real respects real.
She links up with them, yeah. So here is a question. Why can everyone speak English? Or maybe it's believed to be Spanish, but it's all the same language. They're just immediately intelligible to one another.
Yeah. So, it's one thing to do like All Quiet on the Western Front did in 1930, where they're, I think, German soldiers. They're not American soldiers, but they speak in American accents, in various American accents. But they don't speak with people who would speak other languages. So you can at least be like, all right, in stories, you have to hear it in your language to understand it. So they're telling this story about these characters, but in the language that we would understand it. But that doesn't entirely work here because even if it's not English, which, okay, a Beauty and the Beast, they're speaking French, but we hear it as English, But different people, like there's no reason that the Eldoridians, as you called them, would speak the same language as our two con men from Spain.
Yeah. Hard maybe to address that in a way that works like really quickly.
Right.
Like in Pocahontas, they address it, but it's like really strange because they have like love magic that makes them understand one another's language. They listen with their heart, Dan. That's what Grandmother Willow says. That's why Englishmen can understand a Powhatan.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, it didn't even bother me.
Maybe it's better to just not even address it.
Exactly. It didn't even bother me. I was probably more than halfway through before I even considered that it's like, wait, why are they? How are they talking to each other?
I do like the design of El Dorado, and it's clear, a lot of these animated movies, they will send the animators on a learning vacation, like a work trip where you go to whatever culture you're making the movie about and you research the art and you draw from life. And I mean, they've been doing this for decades.
Right, and honestly, it's kind of a fine line between, oh, they just drew a whole bunch of Aztec, Incan, Mexican stuff, but also like you're kind of paying tribute to it and like pulling in the styles. It's not just the buildings look like it and the people have features that resemble people from there. Like there's real tributes to the art styles that you would see in art from that area and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it in The Lion King too. Like there's African influences in that, and French and Beauty and the Beast and Hunchback of Notre Dame.
And I think they did a good job in this movie of like iterating the character design, that everybody, all the crowds of indigenous people, they look distinct. Like individuals look distinct, but they also look related.
Yeah, there's a few features that get shared across them. Like the women all have these bangs that kind of like come down like real straight across their forehead. But I kind of agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me again of Prince of Egypt, where you've got like a way that the Hebrews look and a way that the Egyptians look, and then
Mhm.
you draw a bunch of people who kind of fit that type.
Right.
Also, I found it compelling that the chief and the high priest are both like willing to accept the presence of these new gods because they can kind of play their influence off of each other. Like they're rivals.
Right. This was really interesting to me. And this is different from the first movie we discussed because you get the sense, at least with the chief, that he figures out pretty quickly that they're not gods, or at least he's like dubious enough that he's not really pushing the matter. And he basically is just like, all right, he's uniting the people. So let's play this up. Let's build around this.
Right.
The high priest is a little different. There's just like in there's going to be a turning point for him.
Yeah. And so Sekal Khan, remember these guys are basically Aztecs, based on the Aztecs. And if you know anything about the Aztecs, they were like cutting out a lot of hearts. They had a lot of people on altars, human sacrifice. And so this priest, that's his understanding of religion. And so the first thing is, oh, we should honor the gods. And like at first the chief throws them a party. They get really drunk. I thought the animation was cool to convey that they're drunk.
Right. They get all like sloshy and stretchy.
Yeah, but then the priest wakes him up in the morning. Okay, time for a sacrifice. And this takes the Spaniards aback. Again, similar to in the other movie, there's some culture shock. I wonder, why is Sekal Khan the only one who's like really invested in the human sacrifice? Like everybody else seems to kind of wince at it. Like maybe they've moved past this, but if that's what the culture does, I would think they would be more gung ho.
The people who are about to be sacrificed, they're not on board. That one I get. The chief seems like this is kind of embarrassing. Seems to be his mood about it. But yeah, it is kind of funny. He's like, and now the priest that's his solution to everything is we'll do a human sacrifice. That'll solve our problems.
Miguel and Tulio are not in. They don't like this. And the first excuse they give is like, oh, the stars are not in alignment. It's not the right cosmic time for a sacrifice. They do have one of those lucky miracles where they're like arguing and stifle a volcano coincidentally. It's like a volcano is making noise and then it stops when they stop arguing.
Now, that was kind of stupid. I thought this was a little bit lazy. Like, what miracle can we do to make people convinced? Like, oh, we'll have a volcano not just stop, but like suck back in its smoke at the exact moment that they need it. Like, that's a real coincidence. And it didn't like tie to anything else. If it was something that like tied to them arriving, it would have made a little bit more sense, but it just so happens that the volcano goes off.
Yeah, no, the arrow in the other one was better. And even that was a rather thin read. But because they shoot down this offer of a human sacrifice, the priest is immediately now suspicious. These are not the gods that he was hoping for. And initially, Miguel and Tulio just want to load up the gold and hit the road, but things happen that keep them there for a little while. It's not very long. They're in town for like 4 days, which so one of the things they ask the Eldoradians to do is build a treasure ship for them. And apparently you can do that in 3 days. I think it would take longer than that. I couldn't build a boat that fast, Dan.
No, but maybe if you like threw all your manpower at it, you could.
Yeah, many people working on it, perhaps.
Could you build a boat with an unlimited number of days, Brian?
What does Jerry Seinfeld say? I know you can't, and I'm confident you won't. That's when Kramer comes to him with a scheme. Well, you think I can't do it?
I've mentioned in the past, I was in a Facebook group called Ridiculous Arguments Group. And one of the arguments we had is, let's say that all people on Earth vanished except for you. And you had the singular mission of building a helicopter. Would you be able to do it in the rest of your life? Like, that was the only thing you were working on, was building a helicopter. Would you be able to do it? And my answer was no, because I don't think you could. They like operate machinery that requires multiple people, but
yeah, if you have to go from scratch.
That was one of the more ridiculous arguments we had.
Yeah, tough to say. I mean, would you have access to, like, would you be able to find a factory that you could then power on, or does that not count? You got to be more from scratch than that. And a helicopter is a little different from a boat.
Yeah,
I think a boat, it may not be particularly seaworthy, but I think you could make something that would float, given enough monkeys and typewriters. The two gods start to have a divergence between them. They start to grow apart, and it's mainly because, yeah, Tulio gets a girlfriend. Tulio is involved with Shell now, and also, though, Miguel starts like bonding with the townsfolk. And the initial like introduction to these characters, I think they may just outright state Tulio wants gold and Miguel wants adventure. I guess he wants to go new places and see new things. So he feels this bond, this excitement to meet this new culture and be a part of it.
I kind of like this because in The Man Who Would Be King, it's like kind of all shifted onto the Sean Connery character. He gets both the woman and the connection to the society. And so Michael Caine's just like, let's get out of here. Whereas this one, it's kind of like a split. It feels like they're going down different paths, and it kind of plays up like the different things that they want.
Right. So the one who gets the woman wants to leave, and the one who wants to stay and be a king is the other guy.
Yeah.
So they kind of split it up. Gave them each some business.
Speaking of giving business, this is a pretty horny film.
Yeah, I think that's the number one review, the horniest family film. There's like a pivotal massage scene.
Yeah. And like someone walks in on them and they are like lying on top of each other prone when that happens. And there's suggestion there. They also like disrobe and jump into the bath a couple times and stuff. You get some Simpsons level butt animation.
Yeah. Tulio says, "Let's get the hell out of here," twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Pretty edgy. That's that DreamWorks spirit coming through.
PG is what it was rated. That tracks.
Sekal Khan, though, wants to test the gods again. Needs some evaluation. And as we saw in the other movie, it's up to the high priest to do this. It's like you can't just follow a god hook, line, and sinker without a couple tests. And so what he does is he puts them through the Mesoamerican ball game. So Dan, did you ever learn in like fourth or fifth grade when you were doing various cultural histories, did you learn about the Mesoamerican ball game?
I learned that they invented lacrosse, but I assume this is something different.
Yeah, I think like in Pocahontas, they're playing lacrosse. But this was a thing where the courts are still there. Like where they played these arenas are there. And I think they've kind of speculated about what the rules probably were. I don't know that there are any like written accounts that spell it out, but it's this like long trench with these hoops up at the top. And the ball that they would play with was like a solid kickball. Like instead of filling up a rubber skin with air, it's like a 10-pound lump of rubber that you're hitting around with your hip and like breaking bones if you hit it with any other part of your body than the hip.
That sounds miserable.
Yeah, it sounds pretty brutal. I don't think I would want to play this. And at least one of the ways that it was played was that the team that loses gets sacrificed. So, you know, Sekal Khan is going to love a game like that. He's going to be very into that. But if the gods lose, they're going to die. So we're in mortal peril now, and these are con men though. And so the trick that they resort to is there's this little cartoon armadillo that's been following them around, and armadillos can curl into balls. And so once they're like perilously behind, they deploy this tricky armadillo that is bouncing through the hoop, and you know getting some zany comic points in. But then things are brought down to earth when they win the game, and Sekal Khan says, okay, now let's kill everybody. Let's decapitate the losing team.
Why is that your solution to everything, Sekal Khan?
So two things happen here. One is that Miguel steps up. He's like, look, you got to come down off of this human sacrifice kick. We're not going to do that in my empire. So Sekal Khan kind of begrudgingly bows out. But in the scrum of the ball game, Miguel started bleeding, guys. He's bleeding off one side of his face. And the high priest saw it.
And he gets a devilish grin on his face. This is exactly what happens in well, not exactly. This is similar to what happens in The Man Who Would Be King, because it's a bloody face that outs him as mortal.
Right. No power walking here.
And it was like a bite kiss that revealed it in A Man Who Would Be King.
Right. So Sekal Khan is like banished for a little while. And yeah, the chief kind of lets on that he knows that the gods are humans. He doesn't say it directly, but he strongly implies it, but that he was kind of playing along because they seem to be doing positive things for the community, and they were downplaying Sekal Khan. They were like not feeding into his power trip. So the chief was on board. Then a crazy thing happens because Sekal Khan has a magic cyborg jaguar.
Yeah, it was like all of a sudden this giant Godzilla jaguar smashing around. Like, wait, what was happening here?
So magic is real. Baal has juju, as I said in Ten Commandments. It's like actually their magic, their shamanistic beliefs. That's what's true. You can do this. You can huff a potion and sacrifice a guy into a ring of fire, and then you can telepathically command a robot jaguar. I had this Burger King toy. I have,
oh yeah,
in fact, probably to this day, I have this green Robo Jaguar. This was another thing that it had in common with the Atlantis movie, was like big, ancient robotic animals. Because in Atlantis, there's the Leviathan, which is like a big robot lobster. So, I don't know. Corporate synergy.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like this is the kind of thing you need to have in a kids movie. You need to have the big exciting set piece.
Right. And it kind of gives the gods a chance to put their money where their mouth is, like actually do something noble, protect the citizens from the big monster. And in this fight, the jaguar falls down into this menacing whirlpool that's been like threatened multiple times throughout the movie of, oh, this is where sacrifices go. They get poured down into this bottomless whirlpool. Except Sekko Khan falls down there and it's like a big toilet drain and it flushes him out like not far from the city. It's just like down the river a ways.
So are all the humans that they've dumped down there and treasure and stuff, are they getting out too?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like there would be a big pile,
Right.
a big backup, like like a clog. Who he does find there at the other end of the tube is Cortez has arrived. And this beat is kind of darkly funny because Cortez is the kind of god that Sekko Khan wants.
Mm-hmm.
One of these brutal, scary guys who's going to come in with a sword. And we'll see how that works out for him.
He wouldn't have quite so many qualms with the human sacrifice train.
Right. So Tulio's getting ready to leave on the ship with the gold. Miguel says he wants to stay in the city. But pretty quickly they find out that Sekko Khan is bringing Cortez back. And the logistics of this stuck out to me this most recent watch, that like the timing and the space of it doesn't really work for me. Because, okay, so they hear gunfire and there's like smoke rising over the trees. I think that's enough. That's enough to say, oh, Cortez is out there, because who else would have a gun? Right? Whatever happens, we have got the Mauser gun and they have not. So that should be enough of a tip-off. But then, like, a guard runs into the city and he says Sekko Khan is leading Cortez back to the city. And it's like, well, where were you? Were you at the gate of the city? And in which case they'd be there already. And if it was further away than that, like, how did you get here so fast? Tough to say. Maybe he was like up on a crow's nest or something. Maybe I'm just thinking too much about it.
No, there's a lot of that in this where you just kind of got to hand wave it away. If I may diverge into a personal anecdote, that the way that you framed that made me think of something that happened to me in high school. So in marching band, sometimes they would let us go off and do sectionals, and I was in the trumpet section, and we would pride ourselves on whenever it was time to do sectionals, we would try to find a way to not actually practice and do something fun instead. So one time we were going to play touch football it was like the gym or the cafeteria or something like that. And we had one guy on lookout, and I won't name him here just in case this would ever get to him. But we said, all right, you're on lookout. You got to let us know if the band director or any of the student leadership is coming, so we could like quickly get in position so that it looks like we're practicing. And then, like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes later, he walks into the room. He's like, guys, they're here, but they're like with him. Like he didn't give us any advance notice. It's like the idea of a lookout is like you give us time to get ready. They're here, like literally walking in line with him inside. It's like, okay, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what we get.
Exactly.
Here.
Yeah, like that's what it would be if he was standing lookout. How far ahead could he actually get?
So pretty quickly, what Miguel and Tulio decide they're going to do is ram their treasure ship into like the the pillars holding up the entryway behind the waterfall. That's the entry to the city. I wonder if this would even work. I don't know. It seems like you'd have to do some tests, but that's what they do. And Miguel ends up needing to jump on the boat because he like needs to help unfurl the sail, and so they have to both be on the boat to make this ramming attack work, and that collapses the entryway into the city. They're able to get out ahead of that, and they're kind of trapped on the outside world again, beyond El Dorado. Just as Sekal Khan rolls up with Cortez, and he's like, wait a minute, it was right here. And then Cortez drags Sekal Khan away, presumably into slavery. Like, he probably made this guy be a slave. It was not good. Not good what's going to happen next to Sekal Khan.
I had some questions here. So is the idea that like Eldoradians can no longer get in or out of their city anymore? Did this like cut off, or did they just, this is like one spot that they blocked all like their connection to the outer world? Because it's kind of like an enclosed city, right?
Yeah, hard to say. I wonder how the impact of this plays out. It seemed like not very thought through.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are open to the sky, so there's got to be like other ways out of here.
Yeah, like you could climb over something.
Yeah, I get the sense it's like in a valley that's got, like a ring around it, a ring of mountains. But in real life, they never found El Dorado, so who knows? Maybe it's still hidden out there. Tulio and Miguel and Chell ride off to their next adventure with one piece of treasure left in. The horse still has golden horseshoes.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. Something similar, but nobody got beheaded at the end. Nobody's or
no
crucified.
Crucifixions. Yeah. And they ended up with the girl.
That's right. So do you think it was a good pairing of films?
Yeah, I think it worked pretty well. I guess it kind of fits the purpose of it. It didn't really feel so much of like a left turn and a right turn of like, oh, they're going to go down the light. This is going to be like a light comic telling, and this is going to be a dark telling. It's really just like essentially a similar beat at the end, except instead of the natives chasing them off, they're running away from the Cortez, and instead of dying, they don't. But it doesn't really feel like qualitatively different. Like it really still feels kind of like the same story, but I guess the tone is a bit darker.
No, you're right. The point of divergence is much later in this film. It's like literally the only thing that's different is the end.
Yeah.
And the time period, but not by much. It's about the age of exploration, the age of colonization.
Well, and of course the setting, one being in Mexico and one being in India.
Right. But yeah, it's these two bros hanging out in a hot tub, conquering the world together.
Two bros. Yeah, I need to come up with a rhyme to fit the Vine rhythm of that one.
What would the impact be if they swapped the endings?
That's a good question. So I guess it would just be like kind of almost a silly Monty Python-esque ending if Michael Caine and Sean Connery made it out alive with their power walking away from the angry mob of natives, of indigenous people. And then here, I guess what would happen is like the collapsing pillar would smash down on them, or Cortez would find them, or they would become the human sacrifices. I'm not sure. That would be the El Dorado's dark ending. One thing we didn't say is that I think this is heavily inspired by a series of films starring Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, the Road to Blank movies, like the Road to Morocco.
That's what I've heard. I haven't seen any of those.
I saw that referenced a couple places, and I've heard of these movies. I've seen a couple clips of them. It does seem kind of similar in the sense that like two like Western culture guys who go to some exotic locale and get into shenanigans there, basically. It's not exactly the same story, but like that's the flavor of it.
Right.
But sorry, I interrupted the question. What do you think would be different if they swapped endings?
I don't know. This is one of those things that originated in like the very first time we did this, and maybe it's not relevant anymore. But I just think it's kind of funny imagining somebody carrying Kenneth Branagh's head around in a bag.
I guess they could have played the Mesoamerican game with a human skull. That would actually be the way to do it in the human sacrifice spirit.
Exactly. So are we ready to put this thing to bed, Dan? Do we want
Sure.
to declare whether they are good movies?
So is it good is our signature section where we each give the movies a rating on our 8-point goodness scale, ranging from very not good, which is a 1 out of 8, to our masterpiece rating, toward a good, which is an 8 out of 8. So we'll go with The Man Who Would Be King, 1975, John Huston, just kidding, starring Michael Caine and Sean Connery. I'm going to give this one a very good. It really takes a while to get going before we really get to the good stuff. It feels like you could pretty easily trim like almost a half hour off of this and get a similar story. But I there's no part of it that I dislike. Like, it's always kind of engaging. It just ends up being a little bit long. And it is kind of dark, and it's like hard that I was equally rooting against and rooting for the protagonists. Just the way that they were like imperialism personified and kind of pillaging this society, exploiting it. But it is a very interesting story with a good rise fall arc and just really charming leads. So I'm going to give this a very good. What about you, Brian?
So I came in ready to give this one a very good as well. I think I'm going to bump it just into the 7. Exceptionally good. And the storytelling is, well, the structure of it is a little odd. Like, it's almost set up that you think the whole thing is going to be run-ins they had with Kipling. And I guess it kind of is, because old after the fact Michael Caine is telling the story, but it could have just been that. Like, it could have just been he wanders into Kipling's office. I guess they needed the Freemason thing, but like the first third of the movie is a bunch of run-ins with Kipling. It's like they keep showing up. And then the stretch where they're wandering through the wilderness takes a while. It's almost like 3 different acts. But I could tell that the director loved the source material and was really committed to like going out there. And like each group of people, each of the villages seems like they were grouped and recruited intentionally. It's like, oh, okay, I can see that this is a community and this is a community. And at least to my untrained eye, they seem like they could be from the part of the world they're supposed to be from. And like the language that they speak when when they run into this warlord, it's like that all felt. And again, just to a total idiot American layman, it's like, oh yeah, I buy that that's like an exotic group. And then really, really what makes it is just the ending. The final act is the bread and butter. The menace, the sense of menace once they get to the special city and they gotta leave their troops behind. And you know it's not gonna work out for them. The priest has come to test, and what is going to happen now? And just from moment to moment, I was waiting to see what was going to happen. So I did really like it, and I thought it was put together well, and I think it raises questions. It's like a complex depiction of, what did we say at Dr. Dolittle? I think it was Kipling used the phrase "the white man's burden." It's like that's what the colonizers are doing, and actually, are they just a bunch of con men and exploiters? But also, like, there's brutality out in the world too, and it's like you don't know what you're gonna run into if you go stumbling blindly into some culture you know nothing about.
Right, and I do think it has this undercurrent. And again, I haven't read the source story, so I don't know if this was intentional or not, of like being a reflection on or an introspection on the overall cultural practice of this, not just like one guy's set of guys going out and doing this crazy thing, but like the fact that this was essentially happening all over the world by Europeans, the English in particular. So I guess that brings us to The Road to El Dorado from 2000 by DreamWorks, directed by Bebo and Don, starring Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh. I'm also going to give this one a very good, probably slightly lower. It's very, very easy to watch because it's an animated comedy and it's well made with talent. The soundtrack, I couldn't remember. There's the one about being a god or whatever it is. That one I kind of like. There's the one you mentioned, but it didn't stick with me. And there's elements in the plot that we've kind of talked about, heavy reliance on coincidence and like half-baked logistics of storytelling that you can tell it's not an A++ storytelling effort, but it's well animated, and Branagh and Kline have really good vocal chemistry. Like, it's just fun to listen to them banter, and it's just got this like punchy, fast-paced script and energy and spirit. There need to be more movies that are like this quippy, fast-paced, light adventure. It worked for me overall. And yeah, it's got a sauciness to it too that I appreciate. A little edginess. That was a little surprising. It did. I had heard like, oh, the Road to El Dorado, I don't know, kind of had a reputation for that, but it still was a little more than I was expecting, of like, not like innuendos necessarily, but just like the flavor of it is not too sanded down for kids, I guess.
Right.
So that I'm landing on a 6.
Cool.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, you may remember, listeners, I actually included Road to El Dorado on my list of top 100 favorite films. I was basically just recycling it from earlier editions of the list. You know, we made our first versions in like 2009, and I think it had just kind of endured from there because I really liked it when I was 10. And watching it this time, I was trying to figure out why. And maybe it was just that it was a little bit more mature than you typically expect from an animated film. I do really love the Trail We Blaze number and the sequence where they're going through the landmarks and through the jungle. That's like exciting. That's kind of the essence of adventure. And all the stuff that Dan said is true. Like it's animated well and acted well. I don't know that if I hadn't seen it at the time that I would still like search it out and watch it. I don't know. I don't know that it's had that kind of presence in the culture where it like is a must watch, like some Disney films. Like it may have been a bit of a flash in the pan, but it's got some real talent behind it. I'm going to give it a high 5, a good. I think it is good. I don't think it belongs on my top 100 favorites. I'll need to revise, but I like it. I'm glad we watched it. The art design is cool. It's colorful. It moves nicely. It's a polished product.
Cool.
And so, Dan, where do we turn next on this trail we blaze?
Well, I'm going to keep the 90s spirit alive, Brian. I guess neither of these movies came out in the 90s, so that really doesn't mean anything.
No, you're just keeping the spirit of the 90s alive. That's a noble enough goal.
El Dorado could pass as a 90s movie, I think.
Right.
You mentioned recently that you have never seen Space Jam, so I think we should watch Space Jam and talk about it. I have never seen the LeBron James remake, so I'll probably watch that. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that one too if you get around to it. And if not, we'll just talk about Space Jam, 1996.
Okay. Come on and slam. And welcome to the jam.
We can talk about that whole subculture. Various Space Jam ephemera. You know I love it when Danny DeVito voices a short, rotund, snarky coach character.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, this will be a new one for me. So stay tuned for that, listeners. We always aim to give you the best quality ephemera. All right. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Brian. This is fun. Always glad to see some violent ends. Maybe I'll need to come up with one of these days.
I will say I think I've got one more in the chamber that I'm gonna hold for a while, but I think it may be.
I actually have 2 pairings written down, but I'm not like super in love with either of them. So I might need to just refine it a little, but
yeah,
we'll see.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks, listeners. Join us again.